Hi. How are you? So today we are going to be doing a movie review. I guess it's not really a movie, it's more like a limited series. But we're going to be talking about the assassination of Gianni Versace. I think Ryan Murphy produced it. Sorry to all the other fellow filmmakers that worked on it. That I don't know your names off the top of my head. Unfortunately, or fortunately, Ryan Murphy has shaped so much of my artistic taste and most of the media that I watch. Thank you, Glee. Anyway, let's get into it. There's obviously going to be spoilers ahead. Sorry, I'm doing a very thorough critical review. That's what I do. I'm TheaTouchton. I am trained in film. I'm an actor. I know about the filmmaking process, so I try to keep that in mind. And by any means, I just want to do a round of applause before I start critiquing, because it is dang hard to make a movie. Obviously, it's not rocket science or medical school, but it still is very complicated. There's a lot of artistic personalities. There's a lot to get done. So I just want to say in this critique that I'm not saying, oh, this is awful. I'm trying to think of ideas that are what could have been better, right? Or what really stuck with me that I liked. It's just a critical review. I've made a bunch of mini movies, right? I haven't made a big production one. I understand that studios are. This is not to shame anybody for what they made, because I think this was a pretty powerful story, or I wouldn't be talking about it. I just like to talk about points and give into a deeper analysis of the film, because it's fun and maybe you'll like it. So here we go. Alright, so here is the definition from dictionary.com about what assassination is. To kill suddenly or secretively, especially a politically prominent person, murder premeditatively and treacherously, to destroy or harm treacherously and viciously, and then to assassinate a person's character. So I guess maybe it's worse than murder to be assassinated. So my address is, no, I'm just kidding. I do not want to be assassinated. Then we see if you are into this sort of thing. I understand. I was once a Tumblr girl and I understand the interest. Peaked. There is Versace. I think it's him. It might be his boyfriend. It's very hard in the beginning because it was so slow, and I take notes while I'm watching, so sorry if they're not the most thorough. I'm working on it and I will get better with time. But there's a lot of pink ropes and Speedos if you like that sort of thing. Lots of delicious eye candy to look there. And the craziest thing to me about this is that Andrew Kanata shot Versace in broad daylight and then was missing for, I don't know how you can murder somebody in daylight. Most murders take time at night, which makes sense, hard to see. But he just murdered him daylight at his own home, which is insanity. And then the show takes us to 1990, and we see Andrew Cunanan in this bed of a couple, and I think that is maybe the compelling thing about him, is that he does seem sexually free, which is so interesting, because I think all of this anger has to be from suppression, right? And it's insane. I guess our sexual urges have to be close to murder, because it seems like the suppression of gay people and not having their ability to love the people that they love, I do not think it is unnatural. There are so many creatures that, seahorses are queer, dudes. Seahorses are so queer. The dad is giving birth. There's gender in animals is also just weird, but it's so much more complicated, and I just can't understand. And I came from a Christian background, and I don't know a God that would hate gay people. They are some of the loveliest people ever, and I don't understand it. But you create monsters with this hate when you try to suppress gay people, and I really wish people wouldn't. So in 1990, Andrew Kanata meets Versace in this, and he tries to talk to him, and Versace clearly doesn't want to, probably is approached by gay fanboys all the time, is disinterested, is trying to hang out with his friends, probably a very stressful work week, right? He's got an empire, it's hard. And then Andrew Kanata just flatters. It's a huge compliment train, and it's very awkward. It's very socially awkward. A lot of his Kunanen's interactions are very awkward because he's lying through most of it. I would have honestly loved to be an extra or anything in this Versace Miami world because it is just so visually cool. And he bonds with Versace because he lies and says that his mom was an Italian American and that he hasn't ever been, or that his mom immigrated from Italy and he hasn't been to Italy ever. And so he only has it in his mind. And it like interweaves with the story. So I'm trying to kind of tell you how it happens. Milo, we're doing crunchy things with my cat, I guess. Sorry for the crunchy noises. But the cops also, I mean, it's so weird because like the 90s don't feel that far away, even though it's 2020 while I'm making this. But the cops didn't take this murder seriously or this assassination seriously at all. And they kind of were like, oh, you're gay, you had it coming to you, which explains to our police force. If you were shocked that our police force is corrupt, I don't know what to tell you. But anyway, Kunanen is in the club, 1990, meeting Versace, lays this charm on thick. He like just kept talking out of his ass until Versace noticed him, which is so weird. I don't think I could ever talk to a celebrity to be like, no, you have to pay attention to me. I'd just be like if a conversation came up naturally, and it has in some of the celebrities I've met, but it's not like, I don't know, he like forced this conversation. He was going to talk to Versace, and it's so cringy to watch, to be honest. And honestly, it's so weird because Kunanen even says he's not a fan of Versace's clothes. He says that Versace designs clothes for sluts, which I don't even think so. I've always thought that Versace is relatively conservative and like tactful. There is definitely like a sexiness appeal in Versace clothing, but it feels very contained to me. There's been a lot of theories about why Kunanen is gay. There was like a rumor that he was like a Catholic altar boy and that he got raped. But he lies to people about his religion all the time. He'll like say he's Jewish, which is very weird and definitely like cultural appropriation and other terrible things. And Versace kind of tells a story to Andrew Kunanen about how he made his first dress for his sister and that family is everything to him, which gets very interesting once you hear Kunanen's story. But it made me really like Versace, that he was a family man. I don't know if a lot of fashion designers could say the same thing about themselves. So then Andrew Kunanen, after the club, gets invited and goes to talk to Versace, who was doing gowns for an opera in San Francisco. Oh, how I would kill to have been in that opera and wear opera clothes designed by Versace. Oh my God, what an experience, right? Probably the most gorgeous I would have ever looked, right? Yeah, and you really get to see Versace's love for life in this, like when he talks to Kunanen about how passionate he is. And Kunanen makes up the story to Versace and say that he found out his dad was gay and that he's writing this like great American novel. He's writing this great American novel about it. And he wants Versace to design the clothing for the movie that he doesn't even really have made. He's just like lying. I mean, the lies that he tells are so over the top and ridiculous. And I used to have in high school and middle school a friend who was a compulsive liar like this. And it's never a little lie. It's never like, I ate a blueberry pie when I ate like a key lime pie, right? It's, I ate a blueberry pie and then I fucked it and then it's made my mom eat the pie that I just fucked, right? It's always like 10 steps too extra. And that is exactly how Kunanen lies. The dove shot is so cool to me. They really focus on these dead birds a lot. I don't know what it's a metaphor for, but it's gorgeously filmed. And then Versace's boyfriend sees, I'm sorry I don't remember his name, he deserves to have a name, I will go edit his name right here. But he runs after the shooter, which seems so dumb. It's like he should just he could have called 911 immediately. It seems like you don't have the experience to chase down a shooter, so I just want to make it clear, like, and I understand that, like, impulse and adrenaline and, like, what would you do? But I think you, like, if you see somebody get shot, the first thing you should do is call somebody who can actually help and is trained in these situations and not run after the killer instead, because he's lucky he wasn't shot also. The music in the scene is also so good, and it just builds the tension so well. And then we cut to Andrew Cunanan being all sweaty and cry laughing in the car, which is like insanity. But if I had my own car, Lord knows I would have been there in LA. And then the cops end up arresting this wrong suspect, and Andrew Cunanan hotwires this car and escapes. Just also want to shout out to these medical people who come on these scenes. I so don't have the emotional stomach for it, and you are heroes, and I don't think we appreciate the medical people love it. We don't appreciate people in medicine enough, and we complain about healthcare all the time as Americans. So the police pronounce, then, like, we have paparazzi who take pictures of the assassination thing, and they bid the photo at $35,000, which is so gross. I don't know. I think we need to understand as people to not, and it's so hard to know what is a paparazzi photo. We need to, like, not support that stuff, because that is pretty terrible. Like, that you would sell somebody's murder photo, like, come on. That is so disgusting. Not to kink shame, but for real. And then Versace is pronounced dead at 9:21 a.m. And then they start getting the hint that this guy who killed him might be a serial killer. And then they cut to the scene that is always very stunning, and a bunch of critics has talked about it, but it is so good. And it's Andrew Cunanan watches this woman in a hotel react to the news of Versace being assassinated, and she, like, puts her hand over her mouth, and he, like, mimics her to, like, kind of nail it down, so the police will get, like, the scent trail off of it, because if you look upset, people aren't going to think you've done it, right? And there's also, like, hardly a connection between both of them. They find the truck that Andrew Cunanan was using that's linked to other homicides. So that's how they're, like, starting to confirm the police that this is a serial killer. And the bullet itself in Versace went through his skull, and they milk the heck out of the prosthetic in this series. But I get it. Probably cost a lot of money, and it is, like, crazy, scary, cool. And so I think Versace was polyamorous, so the cops are kind of like, well, do you think one of these people did it? Because they're just going to assume that polyamorous people are murderous, which is not the case. But I understand that they think, like, weirdo people are, because it's weird deviance from normal. So the normal is straight in 1990, and they think anybody else who is, or I guess this was 1997 when he got shot, but anybody else who deviates from that is not normal, and therefore has to be a freak, and not that there are layers to people. I'm kind of glad we've progressed. And then the boyfriend is like, he was my partner of 15 years, whether they were polyamorous or not, so I can't imagine. His struggle is really real, and they kind of touch on that, and it was an interesting thing to see. Then Donatella is super upset at the partner. I don't think he was ever very accepting of her brother being gay, which might be why the real Donatella hates this series. Probably feels really guilty if any of this were true. And she, like, yells at the boyfriend and was like, nothing was asked of you but to take care of him, and you couldn't even do that or protect him. But I'm like, what are the odds that you think that's, like, crazy? Like, somebody's going to shoot you on your front doorstep? Like, the odds of that have to be so low, statistically speaking. And, like, she gets mad and is like, don't talk about her brother without her permission, and is so worried that they're going to just tear her brother's life apart posthumously. And I don't feel like that really happened. Obviously, I don't really know what the news cycle was like in 1990, but I feel like Versace was very respected. So she wants to keep the company, and the company still stayed. Versace was sick for a period of time. They say with AIDS, but nothing is factually confirmed, but I think in the story they're going that he had AIDS, which would be very probable. That was still at the height of the AIDS crisis. And then the boyfriend has like blood on his shirt from like holding the dead body of Versace, and it just like kills me because I could not imagine having the blood of my own boyfriend on my shirt and having to like wash that shirt. I think I would just throw it away. I don't think I could ever wear that shirt again. It would be like nightmarish. I don't know. Time to start the next section. Sorry, I just saw me drink lemonade. So we start off at 1997. First of all, I want to say that the coloration of this series is honestly beautiful. Art. Chef's kiss. So we see a dead bird, right? That's where we start, panning in on that dead bird. And I guess the dead bird is a mafia calling card, and I think that was supposed to hint that they thought at first that Versace was assassinated by the mafia, which would make sense. I would believe that the mafia assassinates people. I don't know that much about the mafia though, even though I'm very Italian, I guess. I've never identified, and I'm not even allowed to have pasta because of the gluten. I can have gluten-free pasta. Versace was rumored to have AIDS. I don't think it was ever confirmed. This is also the series is based on a book that I have never read. I think it has a terrible title, to be honest. One of the worst titles I've ever seen in a book, but it was back before stuff like that really mattered, because you just read what you were told to read. What you were told to read. Who am I? And the beginning of the series, honestly, is so slow, and I kind of hate, they do like a time warp thing in the series that isn't necessary for me. Like, it starts at the end of the assassination, and I would have rather had us build to it, but I am very fascinated, and I think it has to be because of homophobia, that we never really knew much about this assassination, because it is insanely crazy and interesting to me. So there's just a really slow beginning, like I said, and then we have Darren Criss, who is playing Andrew Kanata, breaking down at the beach, which I hate because I love Darren Criss and I only want to see him be happy. The mansion of Versace is incredible, but that makes sense because he's very wealthy, and obviously we have expectations of the rich to have very incredible looking houses, but shout out to set design because that was some nice stuff. Wherever you found location scouting, good cheese right there. More chef kisses. Like, this is a beautiful recipe. And I think that also maybe the assassination felt foreign because most people are not rich enough to afford Versace. I'm sure you can get like bargain stuff, but that is like a very, you've got to have a lot of money. That stuff is not cheap. I think it rings to be like $300 for like a shirt. I mean, I don't want to do that. My boobs rip through most of my clothing. I would not want to sink that much money in, but I would love to take a donated Versace shirt, of course. But now we have this revived interest in him, right, because of this limited series, and now we can kind of appreciate him for the gay icon that he was and all of the incredible things that he overcame as a person. I mean, he literally built an empire. There is a Versace empire that still exists today, and that is very hard. Most businesses fail, and he was an immigrant. He was gay in times where it wasn't as okay to be gay. I do want to comment too, though, that Donatella, his sister, is so pretty, and I personally feel like she didn't need that much plastic surgery, but it is her body, her choice, but she looks like a ghoul. It's crazy. I feel like there is, and you can kind of see it sprinkled in through the series, that there is so much insecurity there, because she was very beautiful, and I feel like she overcorrected, and when you overcorrect on beauty, it is crazy. Just like, I love color, but if you oversaturate something, it gets a little spooky looking, right? I, to this day, don't even really know what an assassination is, right? I couldn't tell you. It's like I always thought it was like, it's a murder of somebody important, right? But I don't know what makes, like, was Sharon Tate, was she assassinated? Was she, Or was that just a murder with a call? I don't know what makes, because it feels like famous people have been called to be murdered. Famous people have been known to be murdered, but I don't know if they've been known to be assassinated. So I'm going to look up assassination real quick and tell you what it means. And then the first episode ends because they bust in on Schmidt from New Girl, which is kind of hilarious. This guy always, Schmidt from New Girl, sorry I don't know the actor's real name. It is very interesting. He's such an interesting career because he's also in Ugly Betty, basically playing Schmidt. And then, but this is like a totally different character for him. Sorry, I had to like fix my hair. I'm having like a mullet thing and that does not do Versace justice. So then we go to episode 2 and we learn that Versace's older sister got sick and died, and then Versace's struggling with like having AIDS, and someone explains to him, well, you gotta get sick before you get better. And Donatella is freaking out and she's like, who am I without you? 'Cause she's got like a drug problem, I think, too, and has a lot of issues. I imagine losing a sibling in the family is probably very psychologically damaging. My family is all sorts of messed up with all of that. And Versace assures Donatella that Versace is also you. And then we cut back to the present day and Donatella is like yelling at the boyfriend again and saying that her brother always had a weakness for beauty, and she blames him for bringing this like dangerous life to Versace, as if Versace's boyfriend made Versace gay, which is not what I think went on. And then we cut to Cunanan, who changes his license plates of the truck, making it harder to detect him. He like even smiles at a kid. It's very weird to think about people who have murdered people smiling at children, but probably happens every day. And then probably my favorite moment of this entire series is when he sings along to Gloria. It is so choice. And just so like, they just murdered somebody, he's having like a grand old time, right? Like normal everyday stuff, killing a fashion icon. And he like just walks about Miami for a good portion of the series, just like probably so many criminals do. And then there's like an Oreo placement with Cunanan, and he like eats Oreos, and I'm very confused at what sort of brand message Oreo wanted, like, serial killers eat us, you can too. Oreos, please sponsor me. I'm not a serial killer, but would be cool. And then we go to a couple of like memories of Cunanan's, and he just talks about himself so much, so many details, and he's like always rambling, and people still bond with him, and I don't understand. People like hate me usually, and people yet like love this guy who never shut up. Maybe because he was like hot, or maybe I'm just not hot enough to ramble. And I mean, Cunanan does, like, he practices manipulation to get what he wants. One thing I will say about Ryan Murphy's stuff, though, I've been becoming like more critical of it because sometimes it feels like there are like overly manipulative things in it, and they're like very political, and they're like, you must think this is wrong, but it's only like one side of it, and it's like, yes, it's very wrong from this side, but you need to consider all of the sides to have a true story. But he's still an effing genius and richer than I might ever be, so. And it's very odd. We see a lot of the people grieving Versace, but it's very hard as the audience member in this because we don't really know who Versace is. We don't know. And I mean, it's like terrible, but I think it's something you think in these murders. Well, what did he do? Did he deserve to be murdered? I don't think anybody really deserves to be murdered, but we don't know Versace well enough to grieve along with the characters, and thus I think you alienate your audience by being detached from that. Sorry, my cats are killing each other in the background. So then we learn about how Cunanan is more trash because he lies about helping AIDS. He lies that he lost his best friend and the love of his life, because yes, he technically lost them, but he also killed them, but we'll get to that in a minute. And he lies that Versace proposed to him, which is insane. These are a lot of lies. And then he just insists that, like, oh, the more you know Versace, the more you like his clothes, which I definitely think is true. And he, like, says that Versace invented his own fabrics himself, which is also true. And, like, honestly, pretty cool facts. I had to include them. Sorry, this review is so thorough and so many things, but I love all my details. And in case you don't have time to watch this, this is your video, right? And just, like, it's so weird to me that he lied about working with AIDS, because most people, I think, would freak out that he worked with AIDS, especially during that time, and they wouldn't see it as this, like, generous act, which I'm sure is what he was going for. There's definitely, like, an Americo Psycho vibe with Andrew Cunatan's obsession with clothes and perfection. And then we see him with Schmitty, and he's, like, duct taping his face, and it freaks me out so much. Sorry, my cats are also freaked out by the duct tape face. And he, like, says to Schmidt, like, you're helpless, accept it, which is, like, not things I personally want to hear in the bedroom myself. And I keep wondering, this is so perverted, so excuse me, sorry, YouTube, that if they stuffed Darren Criss's underwear so that he looked more erect, or if he's just that swole. Curiouser and curiouser. And so then Cunanan is, like, just dancing wildly with scissors, and I'm like, was he ever told that being with scissors was dangerous and why we should be careful with scissors? Because it freaks me out. I have a feeling he's gonna, like, stab himself because he's dancing crazy. And then he, like, does something much worse, and he stabs scissor holes in duct tape, which is so freaky. And then in my notes, which is a terrible comment, I don't know this for sure, but I'm like, you know, Ryan Murphy as a person has probably done some freaky ass shit, because all of his films are, like, very dark like this. It would be very interesting. I would love to follow Ryan Murphy around for a day. I'm sure my eyes would, like, never be the same. I would be, like, opened. And then freaking Andrew Cunanan keeps saying, like, he's like, oh, my mom would bring us lobster for school. Like, he would bring lobster to school for lunch. That is insane. That is so expensive. Lobster is $32. I love lobster. I've treated myself to lobster. But that is, for, like, a school lunch, my mom barely even wanted me to eat. Like, I think we got, like, a peanut butter sandwich. How much is that? Like, $5? It was even, like, those smackables. Probably, like, $2 each. Freaking lobster for lunch? I can't imagine. But, goals, right? So then we cut back to Versace and Donatella in the past, and Versace argues that his clothing has to come from the heart, and he doesn't like skinny models, which makes me love him. I'm so sorry. I don't mean to shame skinny people, but, like, y'all get everything, and I feel like a bunch of people aren't skinny, and even though they are, it's like, there should just be more representation. There shouldn't, like, take away from so much, but all these tall, skinny girls, it's like, I would like more diversity in fashion. So I like that Versace was like, these skinny models don't have as much life, like, I want more vibrant models. And he argues that, like, the heart of fashion has to go first and publicity second, because Donatella really wants skinny models. And he obviously is struggling with sickness, and he's still like, life is special and precious. He doesn't want a dark, morbid show. He wants what the clothes make him feel. And so they get into a bet, and he's like, let's see who wins. And they kind of, I really like their relationship, because it kind of shows, like, oh, it's okay to fight in family. It doesn't have to be this big end-all drama where no one speaks to each other, because I feel like that is what is going on in present-day America. And honestly, in my opinion, Donatella's models were worse. Obviously, I'm biased, but the people voted, and they seemed that they liked vibrant colors more, so Versace won. And he wanted his clothes to make women feel proud and strong, somebody that men found equal. And there were more models of color in his show too. I don't know if that is accurate, but it is pretty interesting. So then we cut back to Schmitty smoking some crack and going back and describing his weird sexual brush with Andrew Cunanan. I can't imagine. And then, like, Cunanan takes a shower with duct tape over his face. I can't imagine that is safe and is, like, not a drowning hazard. And poor Schmitty is just, like, trying to be gay and open up a flower shop, and is instead stuck with this mess. And the time warp, like, and I'm sorry if this is confusing, but the time warp in this series is a bit confusing. It's hard to know, like, what period you're in sometimes. I wish they kind of just went in chronological order because there was a lot of, like, steps, but I understand they were stretching it out for 8 episodes. This was probably more of a 3-episode show in totality. And then Andrew Kanata, and they're like, Smitty doesn't believe Andrew Kanata has money, and he, like, literally flaunts it. And I think that is, like, so dangerous. Like, if I had any wealth at all, I'd be, like, very private about it. I'd be like, oh, I don't know, because I'd be so worried of somebody robbing me. I don't think I would just, like, here's all my cash, me too. Like, I would be like, I don't want to be a target to anybody. I am not trying to get assassinated. And then he tells Schmitty that if somebody asks if we're friends, say no, which is rude. And Versace's boyfriend wants to marry him. And Versace is like, well, you could say this in the morning. Can you say it in the evening? Versace is so sassy, and I'm kind of for it. And then cut back to Kanata. Kanata's got guns stuffed under his mattress. Doesn't seem like a good idea. Also seems like a very dangerous place to put a gun. But then he gets recognized when he's ordering tuna, right? So fuck. And he's on America's Most Wanted. And then somebody calls the cops, and I don't really know if they would do this or if this was just added for suspense, but somebody's like, oh, I see that he's here, and I'm like, I don't know if I saw a criminal that I could call and tell the cops, because I'd be like, was I sure I saw them? Was that really them? I don't know. I don't know if I got a good look at them, right? I would be like the worst person in identifying a criminal. And honestly, you guys, I don't think that in the series, I don't know if this is how it was in real life, but Versace and his boyfriend have, like, no chemistry at all. Like, I am not rooting for them. They do not seem like they go. Like, there's no, I don't feel like any love between them. I feel like it was missing somehow. I don't really know how to fix that because it's like, it seems like a casting issue to me. But his boyfriend insists that he doesn't want clubs and that he wants to marry him, even though it's not legal back then. I don't know how that would happen, or if it's just like you have a private ceremony and that's good enough for you, because so dumb. I can't even believe that the government has ever had a say on who could marry and who could not. Like, why? It doesn't make any sense. And then after this, like, loving marriage confession, they, like, barely even kiss. And I don't know if that's, like, supposed to be sweet, or am I, like, being weirdly homophobic that you just can't do a barely kiss, that I want to see passionate gays making out. But it was very weird. Like, I don't know if it's just their, like, chemistry between them seems off. But also, just want to say that there is so much great music in this series. Ryan Murphy has really good taste, or whoever is doing the sound design on all of the shows. Good stuff. You shaped so much of my music taste. And then somebody asked Kanata what he does, and it's like, he doesn't, like, what do you say? I'm a serial killer. I can't imagine. Oh my God. What do you do? Just kill people. Casual stuff. And then he just lists all of these random crazy jobs, and people were like, oh yeah, whatever. And he was voted in his class least likely to be forgotten in his high school class, which is very interesting. I don't know what I would have been voted. Hopefully best actress. I hope I get that in real life. So now on to episode 3. So we start with this perfume lady, and she says she was always looking for something better and there wasn't anything, so she created it, and she started with her company with nothing but an idea and a longing to explore. She says it's like the most beautiful perfume ad I've ever heard, and it's on like a morning, like those, I don't know if you've ever been on those channels, I don't know what to call them, but they're almost like infomercial things. They're on early mornings, and they'll, like, have people walk out with jewelry or whatever. But she says perfume is the body talking to each other without words. Oh, so much good stuff. I'm also in love with this actress. She's in The Politician too. I think she's like she's a great voice. There's something so, like, compelling and magnetic about her. She's my... If I never made it as an actor until I was her age, but I could play some of her roles, I would be happy still. But she gets a little freaked out because her husband is supposed to pick her up at the airport and he's not there, which is nerving. And then so she goes near the house and she just like instantly feels that something is wrong. And she sees bloody clothes, and then you hear, she like calls somebody immediately when she feels something is wrong, which is so smart. I wish I had the like gumption to do that. I think I would end up checking the house by myself, and then I would be even more scarred. But somebody goes and checks the house for her, and then she hears a scream, and then there's like her nails tapping on the thing, and it's like, there's a couple of things that like try to be artistic in this series, and sometimes they just come a little like trying too hard, but I appreciate the effort, right? And then we go to this clip, because this is a guy that Andrew Kanata killed. He was like an architect, and her and this architect honestly have great chemistry, even with the story being true. They have the like career love banter down. She gives a speech in his honor and says like the American dream isn't dead. There's so much love in her voice for this guy because she's just an amazing actress. Oh, I want talent. Mentor me, please. And she introduces the architect guy, Lee. He was 1 out of 7 children, which I can't even imagine having that many siblings. He sold pancake batter out of a car, and he's the son of a coal miner. And now he manages 32 million commercial property and helps his wife achieve dreams built. And he built the Madison Plaza in Chicago. But he's, I guess, having secret gay sex with Andrew Kanata at the same time, but yet is this incredible father and perfect person for the American dream. And it's very weird because it's like somebody can believe that and believe this guy is doing no wrong, and yet he was like cheating on his wife, and that's so like, it's so crazy how many people experience that, and my heart goes out to them for like, this person is their like perfect ideal and is meanwhile treating them like shit. When this actress takes off her makeup, it is so like fascinating. But Andrew, we clip back and we see that Andrew has called Lee and told him that he's going to be in Chicago for a few days. But his wife is leaving on work, so that's fine. But the wife is like, oh, you should come with me if you want to. And he's like, no, and I'm very proud of you. I can't believe that I could never stand in front of a camera, he says. And then it's crazy. If they're this wealthy, they have like their own church room. I mean, he owns like 32 million in commercial property, so he's like loaded, right? They literally have their own church room. And I'm wondering how many rich people have their own church room. Like, I would build, when I was like doing The Sims, sometime I would build like a worship room. But in real life, like, I don't even think I have like anything resembling a shrine. And Lee treats his gay like it's this like sick addiction. Like, he's asking to be cured, which makes me feel so bad. I feel so bad if anybody feels like this. And he's like, oh, I'm trying, but I keep failing. And it's like, to me, I'm kind of irritated with him because it's like, I think, and obviously I had my own gay husband that didn't tell me, and I would have liked to know, and I understand I would have been maybe mad to be lied to, but I would have, at the end of the day, wanted them to be happy and with a person that they actually liked. And I would never, even to this day, no matter how many terrible things that my ex-gay husband has done to me, I would never not wish him love in which that he felt fulfilled. I feel like everybody deserves that. It's like a fundamental need. So Andrew comes in and Lee's like, next time you need to give me warning before you show up. You're like lucky I had the house to myself. And then we see Andrew like consider going to just shoot him after that, which is like crazy. Like, hi, I'm gonna steal your house. Bang. Like, I don't understand. How can anybody think like this? That's so spooky. And so Lee was working on building the tallest building in the world, and unfortunately died before he could finish it. And that is heartbreaking. So heartbreaking. And he was gonna like try to put the Sears Tower out of business, and make people, when they went to the top of the tower, think, why do you want to be down there when you can be up here? Just freaking crazy. But he, like, Andrew Kanata, like, shames him for this, and it's like, oh, you haven't even broken ground yet. Like, I think he's, like, jealous, and this was how it was with my abusive boyfriend. It was like, anytime somebody was passionate or excited about a dream, it was like they immediately put you down and tear you down because they can't stand that you have a passion that they clearly don't. His full name is Lee Miglin, by the way. And he wanted to name it the Wee Mim Tower. And Kanata gets all mad. He's like, why are you showing me this? Do you think I want to listen to how great you are? Fucking so rude. So rude. And it's like, he's like, we don't have to talk. And you're like using this man for your money because he was an escort. It's very confusing that they go backwards. And now I have to tell the story to you backwards. And he's like, what, are you like trying to impress me with dumb architecture? And it's like, Jesus, like I'm impressed by, you know how complicated it is to put in a building? Like you see like house foundations and it never, like the inside of houses don't look like the foundations they put down. Like that is a brilliant mind technique, but he doesn't care. And then Andrew like just doesn't want to pretend that it's not business. And Lee is like, but I've never been kissed like the way that you kiss me, have you? And he's like, I feel alive when you kiss me. And Andrew Kanata is like, it's not real. And Lee is like, I know it's not real. I'm not a fool, but you make it feel so real. And I just feel bad. Can you imagine feeling that way about somebody who's about to freaking murder you? And then Kanata does his crazy duct tape thing, and he's like, I'm in control now. And then he kills Lee in the duct tape thing, and tells him that he's killed 2 people close to him. And he's like, you see me as like well-read, well-dressed, well-spoken, but he's like, but this is me. And then he like chokes him, slaps him in the face, and laughs at him that he's going to like leave his body in wearing ladies' underwear surrounded by gay porn to like wreck his image, which is terrible, honestly. Like so sick and twisted. I can't believe anybody would do this. I can't believe this is something that happened. And he's like, I want the world to know that the great Lee Miglin is a sissy. So weird. Honestly, from a writer's standpoint, this monologue is like probably would be great theatrically. In film, it's just a little too much. It's like too heavy-handed. It kind of takes you out of the moment. But it's so hard because it's like now everybody will know his secret. He's gonna like out him, and now everybody does know. And I don't even know if it's good that the person did out him, but I think it like makes sense of trying to understand the serial killer. It's like a double-edged sword information, right? How much information is too much information? And Andrew Kanata keeps saying, death or disgrace, what terrifies you more? And it's just like, oh, it's so rough, and you keep thinking like, why did he kill this poor dude? Like, yeah, he's rich and lying to his wife, but I don't know if he deserved this because this was messed up. And it's like he killed him to get his stuff, and he like smashes his face in with concrete. It's so graphic. And he's like, concrete can build, concrete can kill. And at the end of it, he like pants out of breath like he is the one dying. It is so gruesome and horrifying. I can't believe I watched it. And I know a lot of people just didn't like Darren Criss's performance. And to this point, it's like starting to warm up for me. It's sometimes good. Sometimes I don't know. I can't tell if it's just heightened with the writing. I can't tell if that's just how Kanata actually was of what they're assuming. And then for a moment, I think that he's eating people but it just turned out it was ham, so he's not a cannibal, but that did freak me out for a bit. And then he is like covered in blood and rips up Lee Miglin's burning plant, so they can't even like carry on his legacy. It's so terrible, so cruel. I am literally upset. Like, I feel so bad. I don't know how much of this part of the story is fiction, but it hurts me. It truly hurts me. Yeah, it's so bad. So he stole socks, jewelry, money. The perfume lady and the wife of Lee Miglin, Miss Miglin, is friends with the police. She tries to say that he was alone and vulnerable. It was an opportunistic attack. He could have been easily surprised with his hearing aid, and he wouldn't have fought back. And the police try to say, like, there's porn magazines, you know, like, it seems like your husband is gay. And she tries to argue, well, the killer brought the porn magazines. And she's like, I'm not interested in the killer's attentions. You just need to catch him. And she, like, kind of threatens him, and the police, like, don't say anything to her. I don't know if it's because she's relatively wealthy or what, or they just know that she's traumatized and ignore it. I usually feel like police are just mean no matter what. But in the car that Andrew stole, it has a Lexus, and it has a phone that turns on when you turn on the ignition. And it's so fucking weird to me that it's just so weird. He, like, bathed and stayed the night at the house after the guy that he killed. I do not think I would ever be able to do that. And he bathed and shaved. It's so just gross and crazy. And so Miss Miglin gets all this donated food from people. And she has, like, a son who's a Hollywood actor who's at the beginning of a great career, and she, like, even boasts, even though her husband has just been murdered, this kid's dad has just been murdered, and it's, like, great time to promote this guy's acting opportunity. Right when his father got murdered. No better publicity release. So then they learned that Andrew stole a Jeep from the other person that he murdered, and they think he's going to New York. And then I think this is the one where it starts to be Chicago, FBI Nation. And I couldn't tell when they introduced the son, and I wonder if they were hinting at it. But I don't know if Miss Miglin's son is gay, which I always think really also proves that gay is, like, DNA thing and is natural. And they've, like, kind of proven that there is, like, a gay gene, I think. There's, like, an article out there somewhere. And Miss Miglin is talking about how, like, oh, why haven't I cried? People probably think that there's no grief, that I couldn't have loved him. That how can I care so much about appearance? But I think she's just dealing with that her marriage was a sham, and that they had all these adventures, and they shared so much life, and that she didn't even know this, that he, like, rescued her, and yet she didn't even know him at all. And, like, I related to this monologue so much, going through, like, when I found out that my own husband had liked boys. Like, it was very weird, because it was like you even feel wrong that you played into this, like, his own straight fantasy. You feel like you kept him from his own life, when really, I mean, it is Lee Miglin's fault. He should have told his wife what he wanted. He should have went after his big gay dreams. And she's, like, just shook, because she went from this, like, fairy tale life to where her husband's dead, and there's a robbery, and it looks like his husband didn't even fight or raise a finger against it. And it's just, it's beautiful and painful, and you should watch the series just for this amazing acting. And then the cops get furious because the radio runs an ad about the car phone of Andrew Kanata, and so that tips him off that the car has a phone, and Andrew Kanata now knows because of the story, and he pulls out, and it's so weird, it's like an actual old phone. I've never seen this in my life, only the rich back then, I guess, that there's, like, literally, like, almost like a landline phone, and they pull out the wire of it. And I don't even know if that's, like, physically feasible. That seems like a lot of, like, hard labor. And he just like freaks out that he's gonna get caught and that like now the fun is over. And then he goes to this house and he's like, oh, no one's going to get hurt, with his gun out at this guy's head. And he's like, I'm gonna here to steal your truck. Can I lock you in the basement? And the poor kidnapped guy is like, yeah, the door's got a lock. Sure, like me in the basement. And he's like, can you please not kill me? I have a wife and a son I'd really like to see. And then Andrew Cunanan shoots him because he's got family issues, but we'll get, because we're going weird backwards. And that is murder number 4. I mean, it's crazy, like, all his life he hadn't killed, and then all of a sudden it was like, boom, 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 boom. Like, all of these people. I guess when you start, you can't stop, but really crazy. I mean, and like, even if he didn't kill himself at the end of this, he would have to live with that his whole life. And literally, it's like he killed this family man for a car. It's just hard to wrap your head around. It really is. It's very gruesome. And then we end with Miss Migland being like, she gives this very moving speech about not being able, she like goes on, even though her husband's been murdered, and goes on and does a perfume show. I'm sure it's just like a welcome distraction from the thoughts, I wish I had made myself be more busy and do more career work when my husband first left me. And I love the quote that she says of like, think of the little red light as the man that you love. It's a very endearing speech. Now we're on to episode 4. This episode has a really weird beginning, establishing Minneapolis. It's a very odd opening. And I honestly, for a long time, thought that the dog was going to end up dead, and I was just like, not ready for that. So this guy, Jeff, it's Andrew Cunanan and David. They're living together, and this guy, Jeff, is coming up, and David is like, I'm working, and Andrew Cunanan is like, well, you need to get the door so that the two of you can talk about me. Very, very strange. And I guess Andrew Cunanan had asked David to marry him, even though it's illegal for them to get married, and believes that Jeff is the reason that David said no. And I think that they were having an affair. It's very unclear if Jeff and David were having an affair. And Jeff is like, the only reason I came over is because Cunanan took my gun that he then used to murder a bunch of people. Amazing. Can you imagine? Yeah. I can't even imagine stealing somebody else's guns. And the only reason Jeff has guns is because he was in the Navy. And then Cunanan just like strikes immediately when David and Jeff get up in the apartment, and he beats Jeff to death with a freaking hammer. Even though he stole the gun, he beats him with a hammer. Like, it is so gross, and it is so not okay. And then he traumatizes poor David and like puts David in a shower, and David is like freaked out and is like, are you gonna kill me? Like what's next? And Andrew Cunanan is like, no. And David's like, but you killed Jeff. And he's like, yeah, I lost control. What? And he's like, and David is like, you gotta call the police. And he's like, I can call the police and I can tell them, but you know, like, this is your apartment. You let Jeff in. What if will they even believe it? I was like, I might get 30 years, but you'll still get 10. Like, he kind of like manipulates David into thinking that he's also going to be blamed for Jeff's murder. And he's like, I'm sorry. He's like, Cunanan is like, I'm sorry, I can't allow you to call the police and tell them what happened and destroy your own life, as if it's not about his own life. He's acting like it's about David's life. And of course he says all of this too with a gun, which also makes David feel bad for his safety. I feel so bad for David. David is such an innocent soul in all of this. And Andrew Cunanan just keeps going on. He's like, you know, they're going to see 2 suspects, not victims. And he's like, they're not going to believe me. They're going to hate us because we're fags, you know. That's the word they used. not the word I use. I know I have used it in the past. I'm sorry if anybody. I just want to take a moment to publicly apologize. I am bisexual. I don't know if it's claiming it. I've always just liked the word that, and I've never like called somebody that to demean them. But sorry if that word is not okay. And David is like, I really want to talk to my dad. And he was like, and Andrew Cunanan like, you can't talk to your dad. He's going to turn him in. You can't put him in that position. And David like wants to leave, and Andrew's like, yeah, you can leave once you've thought it through. Oh, it's so creepy. And Cunanan is like, well, you were going to leave me. And it's just so messed up that he was waiting at the door. But then they have to walk the dog because they have a dog. And he's like, if I don't walk the dog, it's going to crap all over the place. And it's such a messed up situation. And the dead body is just like still by the door at this time, blood surrounding. And they drag the body and they paper towel up the blood. Ugh, it's so gross. And Cunanan's like, oh, do you want me to come with? And David, obviously trying to make a run with it, is like, oh, I thought you were tired. And Cunanan's like, do I seem tired? And then gets all mad that he wants to walk him without me. And they meet one of their friends in the elevator, and Cunanan assures David, once out of earshot, that no one else is going to get hurt as long as David stays by his side. And then David comes up with this thing, and he's like, well, I can pretend I was out so that I don't know what happened. But Cunanan's got his like hand on David's neck. Oh, and it says so much. And then we cut to the future, and David's work friends show up, and they're like, David is not a person who would miss work and not call. And so they get the landlord to get the keys, and you could hear the dog barking, and then the dog immediately runs out when they open the door, and there's blood on the ground, and both the work ladies think it's David. And they like explain who David... So David, a little more background on him, is 33, an architect, a nice guy. He's gay. The police immediately think, well, it was probably some extreme gay stuff gone wrong because there's no forced entry. Their buzzer in their apartment doesn't work, so they have to, like, when somebody buzzes, they have to go down and walk and let them in the front door. And they say that, oh yeah, there was a friend staying with David who says that he was a Jewish millionaire New Yorker whose dad has a Rolls Royce and is doing sets for the Titanic. More of Cunanan's lies. And then they realize that David's hair is blonde, and then that's not David, and they think that the guy rolled in the carpet is actually Andrew, and so that David is the actual killer, which so sucks. And they're like, well, now the cops are like, well, now we entered the premise illegally if David is alive, so they've got to come back and get a warrant because they don't want the case to fall apart in court. And they're like, the legal system, and Andrew, like, God, set him up so bad. And then we go to this memory of the dad teaching a younger David to hunt, and David does not like to hunt. And he just explains that to the dad, and the dad is pretty cool, and he's like, hey, I don't want you to sad. We can still go on hikes. And then there's the whole theme of there's so much birds dying in this limited series. And then we go to Andrew Cunanan, and he's in the car singing Pump Up the Jam, like everything's great. And he's like, oh, I know a wealthy guy in Chicago. We've worked on projects together. He owes me. He'll give us money, and we'll go make it to Mexico. And he like obeys the speed limit. They'll change plates. They'll make it to the border. And he's like, David, just start thinking about your new life and what you want to do. And he was like, I know you want to part ways, and I would respect that, but we make such a great team. We have no one else, and it's so creepy and mean. Then they realize that the victim is Jeff Trail. And David just gets mad that that Andrew is going to hurt more people because he was like, you promised no one else would get hurt. And Andrew is just like annoyed that David hates him even though he's killed somebody. It's pretty rough. And so then the police go to David's dad and they tell the dad that they think he's guilty, which is terrible. And then David is just like on an emotional existential crisis, thinking about like how his whole small town is going to talk about him, and that they're going to say like, oh, did you hear that this guy was a suspect? There was always something about him, and that it's going to hurt his dad's shop, and how are his parents going to survive, which is like such a character, such a sweetness of character for David. But David's dad doesn't believe that he did that. And then Amy Mann is also in this episode. I think this was my favorite episode out of the whole series. And David had like a moment to like try to escape out of the bathroom, but I think knew it was futile. And then we see David's coming out story. I don't really think this adds anything except his relationship with the dad, which maybe strengthens how sad you feel about David. He ended up being the top of his class, and then he just says to his dad that he's gay, and his dad handles it very well, almost as good. I think like this is probably one of the two best scenes of like coming out that I've seen. There's the one in Glee with Kurt and his dad, and then this one is great because the dad goes, mind if I take a moment? I don't want to say the wrong thing. And he's like, you know what I believe. And he's like, I can't say I don't have a problem with it, but I love you more than my own life. And David starts crying and he's like, hey, there's no need for that. Even though it should be fine. That is like the kind of thing of like boys not crying is very dumb. Because he's crying obviously because he's like relieved that he's not hated by his own father who he loves. And he was like, why did you wait until you won an award to tell me? And he was like, and David goes, good news, bad news. And I hate that people think like that being gay is bad. That just, it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart. I hope that we can build a future where that's not it, because it doesn't feel that way to me, because they're so loving. But then David runs away from Kanata with no shoes, so it's already not going to go well. And then we flash back to San Francisco like a year and a half ago, where David saw Andrew in his expensive clothes drinking vintage wine with his high society friends, and then he saw David alone at the bar and sent him a drink. And David was like, who sends people a drink? Clearly serial killers, I guess. And Andrew Kanata was like, well, you looked lonely. And David is like, yeah, I was lonely. And David is like, I wanted to be like you, rich and sophisticated, with everyone laughing, throwing money like it didn't even matter. And he was like, I was hoping that you would invite me to your room, but like, what are you going to say in a small town boy? And Kanata had a room that was like $1,000 looking over at this bridge, and he changed the room 3 times. And he was like, oh, I couldn't wait to invite you back. That was like the best night of my life. And David confesses that he took a pair of white slippers that are at the hotel gave him and felt like cheap. Like he was like, anyone who belonged to that rich life like wouldn't take them. And David was like, how long do I have to work until I live like Andrew? Like I would do it. Except Andrew was lying. He wasn't that rich. And he's never worked for anything. It's all an act. And he was like, even Jeff had Andrew Kanata figured out. He saw the real you, and he saw the real him, and Kanata killed him for it. And Kanata's like, yeah, just wait till we get to Mexico. You know, I'll make more money. And David is like, wow, you can't stop, can you? Like, is starting to realize like that he is seriously mentally ill. And he's like, you knew that you were going to kill Jeff. You planned it, and you knew that I would be part of it. And he was like, and then like, David grabs the wheel, because they're talking about this when they're driving, and And Kanata puts a gun to David, and he's like, why are we talking about the past? We had a future, David. There was a plan. We had a plan. And he was like, you should convince me. And David is like nervous for his life and is like, okay, we'll visit your money in Chicago. He'll give us money. We'll have an adventure. We'll find work and a place to live. And then Kanata is like, but you don't believe that. And Kanata is like, oh, we could live next to the sea. We could learn Spanish. How much Kanata believes his own lies, like, is... I think Darren Criss deserved this Emmy because this was no easy role, and he is so captivating in it, and he plays this compulsive liar so good. And he just makes up this whole thing of how they'll learn Spanish, and Andrew Kanata is so smart, he'll be fluent, but I'll struggle, but you'll help me to learn, and we'll just be happy. And it's hard because it's like, there's a reality where David could have went along with Andrew's craziness, and this could have been what happened. Kanata could still be in Mexico today had David not put his foot down. and because that's what David wants to do. David says, we have to go to the police. This has to stop. And Kanata is just devastated. He's like, why couldn't you just run away with me? If I was Jeff, you would run away. And he was like, you would rather go to prison. And he's like, this all could have been real. And David's like, no, it couldn't have been. And then he like goes to this fantasy dream state, David does, and he sees his dad with coffee, who was so grateful to have this coffee. Oh, such a good episode. And in reality, while he's like running through this field away from Kanata, who's trying to kill him, he can get back to his dad and see his dad enjoy a cup of coffee one last time. And it's just like, it's such a brutal murder. You can see it's like very pretty where he killed him. There's all these like sun streaming through the leaves, and he shoots David in the face. Andrew Kanata does, and he doesn't even look that upset, just pouty. And he like lays next down to David's dead body. The way Darren Criss moves though, it's haunting. This was an entirely haunting episode. So then we get to the next one of where Versace is going to go public and publish in a magazine that he's gay. He feels like he owes it to the company. And Donatella kind of blames it on his boyfriend because she thinks that the boyfriend wants to be famous so that he can be known as Versace's lover because he's tired of being mistaken for like an assistant. And Versace's boyfriend is like, I know my place. I've lived for silence all this year. He's like, and Versace's like, yeah, I'm not fighting over this. Versace is mine. I'm going to do what I want to do. And it's just crazy because it's like, it was illegal to be gay in countries. I think in some countries it's still illegal to be gay. And why? I hate it. I hate it so much. I know so many people are going to be bigoted, but screw you. Honestly, screw you. Why? Why should it matter? Whose business is it? Even if it's God's, then he can judge them. It's so, I hate it. Especially since the word for homosexual, I think, has been mistranslated into pedophile. And it's just, so terrible. And Donatella just worries that Versace just forgets how ugly the world can be, and that the brand is maybe braver than the man. And Versace just goes to Donatella and he's like, are you angry with me or with the world and how they treat it? And it's so powerful. And Donatella just brings up like Periella's died and people stop buying a lot of clothes. But then we see Versace get sick and he like gets caught when he takes a bow. I don't really think they're talking about Periella's, I guess he like, and then Versace like claps back, was like, yeah, but when he was sick they caught him with a bow and it was his best show. And Versace's like, it's very important for me to come out. I was sick and I didn't die. I'm alive and I gotta use it. I've gotta use my activism voice. And I bet you he probably was a huge force in the movement for gay people, and that they probably do owe it to famous people doing it. And I always get mad because like my aunt is like, why are stars, why do celebrities become political? And it's like, well, because they have power and they try to do the right thing with it by voicing what they believe. So then we go back with Andrew Cunanan, who is calling his credit card company and says he needs to make one more purchase. He can fix credit if he can get to Minneapolis. His friend owes him money, and he's like, if you can extend my credit to make one ticket, I can then make a repayment. And then we learn about Jeff, who is this gay officer in the Navy, and he kind of denies it because some of the like people are like, why are you working at the place that you work now? Most people don't leave the Navy to just go work in a place like this. And Jeff like flips out because he's very hostile about being gay. Just doesn't handle things very well. And sometimes I can kind of see it's terrible, and Jeff obviously didn't deserve it, but I can see why Cunanan killed him, because he is very angry. And sometimes I appreciate what military people go to, and I understand why they are the way they are, but sometimes you guys are assholes. You guys are buttheads sometimes, and I wish you wouldn't be. I get it. And Jeff explains to David that like everything Cunanan is saying about his life is a lie. And he's like, I don't feel sorry for Andrew. He's lonely for a reason. And he like lets Cunanan have his apartment for one night, but he's like, it's not gonna be like old times. We're not gonna hang. And it's because Andrew Cunanan wrote Jeff a postcard, but sent it to Jeff's dad, almost to like out him, and Jeff thinks that he did it on purpose, and he probably did. Andrew had signed the postcard, Love, Drew, Kiss, Kiss. Andrew insists that he made a mistake and that he was sorry. Yeah, and the reverse order, like as you can tell, even probably me telling it right now is confusing, and it was confusing to write. I wish they just did it chronological because it has such a build, and I think, personally from what I've seen, I think it's better to have, it probably hurts you critically, but it's better, I think, to have the good episodes up at the front, because most people, I feel like if they get, if they're invested so much and they care so much early in the beginning, they will go finish your series. That would be my advice. So Cunanan buys David a watch and proposes to him with it. And David's like, we can't get married. And then Andrew's like, we'll call it a commitment ceremony. And he's like, you know, Andrew, it's not the idea of the term. It's just the idea of like you and me. And Cunanan is like, we'll keep the watch regardless. You helped turn my life around. And he's like, I'm a whole new person. All I need is someone to be a whole new person with. And then we hear Jeff talking to his sister, and he says that like he's still talking about how like the postcard was a threat, and the sister's like, why don't you just tell mom and dad? And he's like, I don't want to ruin your childbirth because she's pregnant. So it's also very sad that he dies because he was going to be an uncle. And the sister's like, I want you to tell it. I want you to tell them it's my baby. And he's like, he just says, he's like, I'm looking forward to being an uncle so much. And it's just, it's so tough. Like, it's, these people have families, and sometimes we don't think about that too. It's like, these people may be dead, but they left behind people who are very, very much grieving. Then we hear Andrew telling his ridiculous Titanic lie. And David breaks it down to him, and he's like, I don't need the whole weekend to think about whether or not to marry you. He's like, and then Kanata pretends that he can't hear him, and he's like, let's just dance. And David's like, listen, even if we could get married, we can't. And he's like, and he apologizes for it. And he's like, I couldn't sleep last night. And he gives Cunanan back his watch. And he's like, I know money's tight. And Kunanan's like, no, it's not, even though we clearly saw him on the phone with the credit card company. And David's like, hey, it's okay to ask for help instead of telling all of these crazy stories. And Kanata is like, what crazy stories? And David's like, you're not working in Mexico. You don't have a condo. He's like, you're unhappy. He's like, you helped a lot of people. Let me help you. I mean, these lies really are outrageous. And he's like, it's not possible for me to marry you. It would be just another crazy story. And Kanata's like, I'm going to start a new life in San Francisco. I need somebody to share it with. And then gets like suspicious and be like, is Jeff the friend that you're seeing? And honestly, then they do this like really cool documentary thing, and I don't know if I wrote this or if it was in the thing, but I love this quote no matter what. And it's like, if gays in the military scene scare you more than war, you need to get a clue, dude. War should be the thing we're fighting. Peace should be the thing that we're striving for, and we shouldn't be upset with gay people. Sorry, my lighting just changed. I've been talking for a long time because there's so much to talk about. But I like this. This is a little more spooky. And the fact that for these gays' own safety to not be attacked by their own brethren that they're fighting within the army, they have to be closeted. And like even in this documentary, they all have to be in shadow with voice disguises. And the majority of gays are closeted and always will be closeted. And Jeff even is in the documentary, and he's like, talking to you could be the end of my career, which is insane to me. How could the government use these people and then discriminate against them because they're gay? Like, it makes me so frustrated. And then we go to this flashback where Jeff saved the sailor's life from being beaten to death because he was gay. And he was like, if I hadn't saved that sailor, no one would have suspected that I was gay. And then we see Andrew watching this documentary, and he like practices shooting at Jeff, which is gross. I don't know if he was like, and it seems like Andrew gets mad if anybody has more attention than him. Sorry, I'm gonna slurp this applesauce because I need to stress eat because I'm just so upset with the way that the past was run. Ugh, it's so mean. And all the risks that people had to take. You pretty much had to be a celebrity because you needed the money to protect yourself and to have bodyguards. It's just insane. And then it's just weird that like gay people are considered, or were considered back then, and even now to bigots, that they're like pedophilic or racist or like a rapist if they are touching someone with their consent, even if it's the same sex. It just doesn't make sense. And we see this other guy in the military who's just getting beat up in the bunk bed because he's gay, and Jeff helps him and he's like, you need a doctor, and the gay guy's like, I need to get out, I need to be reassigned. And it's just, I don't know why. I don't know why people do this. I will never understand it. Then they get arrested. I think Jeff gets arrested, or a bunch of the gay guy that got beat up gets arrested because there's a hookup place for gay, and he got there's a hookup place for gay people that was happening with the military. And Jeff gets threatened that there won't be any dishonorable discharge if he can list all the names of the people. And he's like, I don't know any names. I only know like tattoos. And then he cuts off his own tattoo, and it is so gross and disgusting and so messed up. And like, it's so fucking weird that there's a regulation about being homosexual. And I don't understand. I don't understand why being gay makes you seem down tough. I honestly think usually gay men are more fit than straight men. Just, ugh. And then they're just like, the military's like, you know, without a code, we are nothing. I'm like, without a good code, you are nothing. I would dare to argue, but anyway, you can tell how angry this makes me. So the one guy who was gay, Jeff goes to hang himself because he's so sad, but he thinks against it, and he was going to hang himself in uniform. Like, if that doesn't give you a message that it's wrong to persecute against gay people in the military, get a clue. Get a freaking clue. I don't even care that I'm being rude. You have to stand for something, and I cannot I don't even care for religious reasons. I think your religion is wrong. I do, if you believe this, because this is a country of freedom of religion, and they should be able to love who you want to love. The first time Jeff goes to a bar, he meets Andrew, and he like walks him through it, and Andrew is like, well, now I'm part of your history, and you'll always remember this moment, and like treats him to a beer. Also, it's very interesting, a lot of people supported the Clintons, and I want you to know that Bill Clinton was a proprietor of the no gays in the military rules, so just the more you know. It's hard that you can't trust anybody, huh? You can't, so rough. We need better people in politics, and I hope that we inspire our generation to really get things done ethically. And so Jeff is just in a really dark place. It's the end of his career. He feels like he should have died a long time ago because they're never going to promote me, even though he's a good sailor going nowhere. And he's like, he wants to take the moment back so people wouldn't know to promote sins, and it's like, and I guess maybe that's why people don't want to people hate gays, because they think that's like promoting sin. I don't know. I don't understand. But it's like, people promote gluttony, which is also a sin. People promote lying, which is also a sin. People promote cheating. People promote divorce. People promote all of these things that are sins. It's just shameful to abuse people. We were never going to be perfect, and the fact that we turn on each other is just, I can't. Why would you want to worship a God that wants that? It's just awful. And then I made a joke. There is so many showers in this series. It might be responsible for the drought in California. I don't know. Jeff gets angry that Andrew touched the uniform, and Andrew's like, I don't understand your obsession with this. Like, look how they treated you. And I kind of got to side with Andrew here. He's like, you're clinging to this masculinity. And he's like, you don't believe in anything. He's like, I don't even know you. You're a liar. You don't know what you stand for. He's like, you have no honor. You're washed up queer with a shitty job, a shitty condo, and you could do something else. And Jeff, like, wants to serve his country, which is so sad. It's so sad. He wants to serve a country that doesn't even accept him. What kind of loyalty? Show me a straight man with that kind of loyalty. Oh my God. And Andrew says, probably this is my favorite line, he was like, you're not in the Navy anymore, sweetie. I just want to like clap back with people that, even if they've never been in the Navy. It's just so fierce. And Andrew argues that he was like, I saved you, I was there for you. And Jeff is like, you destroyed me, I wish I never met you. And I think he's being too harsh, and he's just very confused individual. And he like hits Andrew, and he's like, no one wants your loved. It's just very, very messed up. And I almost wonder, I have this theory, I was like, I wonder if Andrew broke the buzzard to get the outcome or just used it to his advantage. I have no idea, but it's so tough. And he definitely, there's no doubt in my mind that Andrew didn't set up this thing, that didn't like have a slight plan. I don't even know how you could think to plan this. I feel like I can barely plan my day. I can never do a get ready with me video because I don't have a routine. I'm all over the place. I've been really working on it. And Jeff is like very irritated because Andrew doesn't have a gun license. And I think you can get in trouble if somebody steals your own guns. Like, you end up getting roped into responsibility. And it's so bizarre to me, like, why does Andrew use the hammer if he had a gun in the first place? Is it to set up David so that, I don't know, it's just so crazy. But they hit you with the heavy-handed, you ought to feel sad, the directors do, or the producers, because they leave all these voice messages that are on Jeff's messaging machine. So then we go to this party where Andrew invited friends, and he had like 2 parties, I guess, because he's sleeping with this older gentleman. And Andrew insists that he's not officially gay because he doesn't like labels. And I think somebody jokes, he's like, well, it's nice to know what's inside the can before you eat it. Which is very funny to me. And he's living with this like older wealthy client. And he's trying to be somebody that David could love. He wants to give David a home, a house, a yard, a family. He wants to pick up kids from school. Like, it's really hard because it's like Kanata is in love. This man is capable of love. I think he really loves David, who does not, I think, feel the same way, because Andrew seriously has some problems that are very concerning. Andrew Kanata does this weird thing where he gives Jeff the shoes that he wants to be given. Like, he gives his own gift to the people so that the gifts look appropriate. It's so weird. He's like, I want David to see that I have good friends, that I look the part. And he was like, I'm not asking you to do anything you don't want to do, Jeff. He's like, I just want you to help. And it's so bizarre and creepy. And he wants Jeff to tell David that he's still in the Navy, and Jeff's like, I'm not gonna impersonate an officer because it's illegal. And he's like, listen, I'll wear the shoes you want me to wear so I look like the kind of guy you want, but I'm not gonna wear the uniform because I've been discharged. So Andrew Kanata gives all this free food and champagne, which is really his like sugar daddy's money. David clearly doesn't hug him back, and he's like, oh, you're so sweet, this is the furthest anyone has traveled to see me, except the FBI later when he gets caught. And Lizzie, his like best friend of 8 years, who's a girl, like totally like metaphorically dick sucks him in front of David to build him up, and is like, she's like, oh, this is like the godfather of my children. And David gives Andrew a present. He hasn't even opened it, and he goes, it's perfect. He's just like really blowing this. It's so rough. And he like tells David, he's like, oh, we'll have a house that's all grand and special like this one day. And I think they make a joke about how Versace doesn't make shoes. I didn't know Versace didn't make shoes. He might now. I have no idea. Somebody fact check if he makes shoes. And then you kind of start to see that maybe Jeff and David are falling in love here. Andrew Kanata does cocaine. And then he asked Norman, I think, for more money. Norman is his, like, conservative, rich sugar daddy boyfriend. And Norman explains to Andrew that he's like, listen, you're not an equal employee in my money. You didn't build a company from scratch. He's like, you don't know anything. You don't know what it's like to watch someone waste away. Oh no, that was, Norman is, I think, oh, there was like a friend, that was about a friend. There's this friend that just like suspects that there's something weird with Andrew, and like, I think probably has a crush on the sugar daddy that Andrew was doing. And he's like, you don't deserve this life, essentially. And he's like, that's my gift to you, is this advice. And Andrew Kanata is like, well, you're an unpopular party guest if your gifts are this dreary. And the guy's like, I don't mind being unliked. And Andrew's like, how fortunate. Oh, he's so sassy. And then the guy makes this clap. He's like, you're too lazy to work and you're too proud to be kept. And Kanata fires back. He's like, that room is full of people who love me. And the guy says, that room is full of people who don't know you. And it's, oof. And then Kanata outs Jeff at the party, and he didn't check about this at all. He outs Jeff that he has like a boyfriend at the mall, I think because he's suspecting that him and David are getting close. And it's wild. They like take a picture, and all three victims are next to Andrew Kanata. It is frightening. So Lee is also at Andrew's party, which is so weird that Andrew invited him. I don't know if I would avoid, like, if I'm trying to impress a guy I like, I don't know if I would invite a guy that I slept with. And Kanata yells at him. He's like, I told you not to approach me. And Lee's like, I'm gonna leave you alone. You look so handsome. It's just, it's rough. And you can kind of just see, like, the bomb of Andrew Cunanan that is being created here. And later you see Cunanan scratching out everybody in the photo except David. I wonder if that is really a real picture. So then Cunanan goes to a sugar daddy and he wants $1,600 a month, a car, first class flights, and he'll do like a whole year. And the guy's like, I don't know, you haven't made any sacrifices. And Andrew Cunanan is like, I did make sacrifices. I sacrificed my parents' love. They disinherited me, which I don't even think is true, because Norman is like already caught him in his lies. And he's like, I know you worked at a drugstore and lived with your mom in a condo. And then Cunanan is like really put off that he like researched him. And he's like, well, if you agree to my demands, sex can become more regular. Just raise my allowance. And he was like, Norman is like, every dollar I give you, you spend on other people. He's like, I'll pay for you to go to college again, because I guess he went to college but then quit history. And Andrew's like, it's just too ordinary to work. And Norman's like, well, you know, being smart is useless unless it's in service of something. And Cunanan's like, well, I want Lester, I'm leaving you. He's like, I want you to be happy. I made you a beautiful home. And Norman's like, I won't mind you telling lies to smooth over any discomfort, but he's like, I'm not letting you think that I'm a fool. And Cunanan is like, I lost the love of my life by living with you. And he's like, and Norman goes, well, if I'm making you my hair, you don't even want me around. Like, you're daydreaming of the day that I die. And he's like, you can have this life with me if you work for it or share it with me. And Andrew is like, I want the list. And Norman's like, no, right? And then Andrew breaks all this stuff and he's like, I'm leaving. I expect you to call. Very, very dramatic. And honestly, Norman lucked out, right? Losing him, Norman lucked out. And it was mean. Cunanan wrote that postcard to Jeff because he was trying to stick it to him that he was trying to steal David. And we see, like, Jeff is a very interesting, he's definitely, like, struggles with violence because we see him beat up people like that. And it's just so rough. And Jeff is moving to Minneapolis to be closer to David because it just hurts him to see a naval ship because it's like everything he's lost and it's so heartbreaking. And it's interesting too that he went after two architects because David is an architect and Lee is also an architect. And Cunanan invites David to Los Angeles, begs him, says he'll fly him through clothes, and David's like, we'll see. He also looks awful in the suit. It just doesn't suit him, but that might just be like a character choice, to be honest, because it seems like David struggles with, I think that's probably why Andrew Cunanan wanted him, because I think he wants to, like, dress up David a little, because David is, like, you know, little small town boy. And David just feels very uncomfortable. He's like, I shouldn't have come visit you. He's like, this is all too much. He's like, listen, I'll pay for half. But I don't feel like the same way. Like, you're not the one for me, Andrew Cunanan. And it's so interesting because it's like this Andrew Cunanan, this liar, loves David, who will not tell a lie. Even in the face of death, will not say a lie and lie about how he feels. David's like, we had one great night. And he's like, maybe you don't have a lot of great nights with people, so it feels huge, which is so me. I can totally relate to where Andrew Cunanan's been, because I feel like I've had such a hard life. When I have great times with people, I'm like, this is the best thing ever. Like, and David, like, tries to get to know Andrew. He's like, tell me who your parents are. And Andrew says, you know, my dad's a stockbroker. We invest in pineapples. My mom ran a literary publishing house. I don't know how much true is that. I think his dad was a stockbroker, but I'm unsure. And he's like, oh yeah, my parents loved me more than anything. They gave me everything I wanted. They gave me a master bedroom, the credit card, his own car, which I don't think was also true. And it sucks because it's like the one thing that is true already seems like a lie. And this is where I start to kind of feel bad for Andrew. And he says the thing about how his mom brought him lobster at school again. And David is like, you know, doesn't feel like this is true because his like own parents run a hardware store. And Andrew insists that he's like, I'm a good person. I just want to be good to you. And it's like, but honey, do good people lie? And David says, like, hey, you know, like one day you're going to make somebody very happy. And it's just so hard because it's like, had Kanata been real, he could have had David. Also, this hotel was and that whole night with him was a $2,500 50 night. Oh, crazy. And then we see Kanata having a crazy experience on meth. Of course, he's doing drugs. That probably, I honestly think this was probably, if him doing drugs would be a big break on his conscience. Like if he was already mentally unstable and a liar, I'm sure the drugs only accentuate it. And on his meth trip, he like talks to Versace. And gets all mad because he thinks that Versace thinks that he's better than him, even though Versace probably technically kind of is. Not that I encourage people to think that they're better than other people, but what has Kanata done but kill people with his life? And Versace has like actually worked and done and created an empire. And then the Versace says, it's like a very weird artistic scene, but Versace is like, yeah, I worked and I'm also loved. And it's so interesting because it really is like they are total opposites. Versace wants the truth and Andrew wants to be fake. I didn't really love Darren Criss's acting in that drug scene. But he's doing drugs and unraveling now. Andrew Kanata, and he crawls back to Norman, who calls the police and watches him act like a madman and change the keys to the house. So Kanata goes back to his mom and lies that he was in Milan, and he just looks like crap. And his mom washes him and sings a lullaby when she's like crying, and it's very weird that she's doing that in his late 30s, but maybe he is just like so out of his mind he needs the help. And she says, you know, life is nothing without children. She's like, that's really no life. And then gets very concerned and freaks out and is like, you don't smell like you. This is not your smell. We need to make you smell like you. It's so very bizarre, their relationship. I almost feel like maybe there was I don't know what was going on. I think it's implied that his father molested him in the show, but I'm uncertain because it was very, very, very like light. And his mom like starts to worry. She's like, I gave you everything. Like all these other moms talked crap about us because we weren't living in a nice house. She's like, I gave you everything, but was it even worth it? Right? Like given that what her son has became. And then she's like, it's so hard because I have to share you with the world. And it's great. He's like so loved by her, which is so odd because I'm not a serial killer and I'm not loved by my parents, which would make me feel like that is the very reason to be a serial killer. And the mom has like bragged to everyone that he's in Paris and Milan with Versace. It's just terrible that he's lying to his mom this way. It's so rough. Then we come to Versace, who is trying to design a dress as a weapon. and he's sick, and he can't be able to hide it, and Donatella's like, well, you don't have time to be kind, and Versace's like, well, I don't have time to be cruel either, and they just, like, the other problem is, like, they repeat that military thing with Jeff, and it's just, like, too much, and I think we need more Versace background, and Versace, like, kind of preps Donatella, and he's like, listen, it's not the quality of the sketch, it's the quality of the idea. He's like, you're pretending to be bold. It's not enough. He's like, I'm asking you to grow. I really like their relationship. I like that he groomed her for this to be ready, like, made her take it over. And he's like, this might be the last dress I make. Soon it's just going to be you. And he's like, so if it's you, it has to be you, not me. He's like, you have to make this dress yours. Take it, own it. And he's like, you are my legacy, not my dresses. And it's so sweet. So then we get to Cunanan, who is working at CVS, and they realize that he's doing a PhD. And he, like, flips out his mom that they don't have Hasdans, which he gets like upset about the ice cream because it's not even really German ice cream, and, like, throws it and has, like, a fit. And he, like, has, like, a real problem with being told no. It's just crazy. But he meets Norman at a bar, so that's how he met Norman and got his sugar daddy. It's, like I said, it's very confusing that this series goes backwards. I don't know why. It doesn't add anything. I guess maybe it's supposed to be like a unreeling of, like, well, here's the surface level into the core. Maybe this is why he was a killer, but I don't think it translated well, to be honest. So Cunanan joins this escort agency, and he looks like he's dressed for church at 23. The lady is, like, not having a story bullcrap. He, like, wants stats. He's, like, doesn't like that he's Filipino. He's like, Latinos are big because there's that stereotype that, like, Asian dicks are small. And Andrew Cunanan is like, well, I'm clever, funny, and witty to be around. And the escort lady's like, they're looking to fuck, not for a wife. And she's just like, how big are you? And he's like, I'm well endowed. And he shows her. And she makes him roll up the sleeves to see if he's done drugs. He has read all these books on the shelves, and he, like, says, like, I am the dinner conversation. Andrew Cunanan took a man who was, like, trying to take a man who was 30 to a senior prom. And it seems like he's better with older men than men at his own age. And it's just really struggling, and with something that I honestly understand, because it's like, no one really does care how hard you work. It really is about, like, being what people want. And the lady is like, I can't sell a clever Filipino with a big dick. And then Cunanan is like, well, then fine, I'll sell myself. The dress that Versace designs for Donatella is pretty cool. And the dress, like, gives her confidence, and then she starts to model her own design. I think this is actually the dress that, like, made Donatella the star she is. It was, like, at the 100th Vogue Gala. I'll see if I can find it. And it's, like, a moment of, like, you can see Versace letting Donatella become on her own and, like, giving her confidence and, like, building up her sister, who was probably devastated at the death, because it's like, you come to rely on that. So then we have Cunanan, who lies about being Portuguese. Man, I should do, like, a lie counter at this point. He often sounds like a lecture hall, so you can kind of understand why he's not popular with people of his own age. People can kind of, when he goes to escorts, they can kind of tell that that his tux is rented, right? They can, like, see through him that it's not going very well. And I think then we discover about Norman, who was, and some of his friends, where they were, like, hiding. They were married for a long time, and they turned to drinking and then realized they were gay. And then we see him like meet Lizzie at a party, and we kind of see like their friendship develop. It's crazy that Norman and him were in San Diego, just because I am so close to San Diego. It's wild. And something about, I used to think that Penelope Cruz did a good job with Donatella, but I still feel like something's missing from her. I think she gets kind of stuck in the accent. And there's definitely, like, they come into a problem because people are like, listen, they're disgusting, but they're not buying. They like celebrate it, but they're not buying it because you need to turn away from grandeur. They want simplicity and practicality. It's like, it's a dress great for red carpet and headlines, but it's not going to be worn. Where would you wear this dress? It is like, maybe to like a club nowadays, but it's a bit different. And Donatella is struggling. She's like, well, they want me to wear this dress and talk about female empowerment, but keep my mouth shut. And they're just like, listen, not everyone wants to be the center of attention, which is true. And they just get into a huge argument about it, about like arguing that they have to make clothes that people want to wear, and that there's a time and place. And Versace gets so upset and he like cuts it and he's like, is it normal enough? And then he goes like deaf, and it's very scary, but I understand. I so get the artist struggle of like having the dreams and people not being comfortable with the dreams. So Kanata is still lying about how he came into money, and just acts absolutely extra. And then we see where he kind of like sends David wine, and you can kind of see even David's fascination with the slippers. And he retells a story that I think that his friend had said at a party, and replaces it with like a different name and tells it to David to kind of impress him, because he was like, oh, I was in love with this girl, Leah, because people were mean to her, and he was like, I promised that I would build her house where no one could be mean to her. And then Leah ended up being upset that he was gay because he thought the house was a marriage contract, and he's like, I hope that she found her house. And it's such a good story. I wish I wrote that. It was so moving. Yeah, and then even Kanata said, he's like, it's a good room with a good view, but I didn't get pleasure until you walked in. And then we see Andrew watches this one other guy kill another gay man, who buys drinks because he's a straight man. He goes to gay bars and I guess kills people. And he's like, but the gay men like love it because they think it's like John Wayne, who was like, I guess, one of the sex symbols to people. I've never been into him, but to each their own. And when the guy tries to kiss him, the other guy like freaks out and kills him, and it's fucking bizarre and scary. And Kanata sees it and is like, you should run, and doesn't call the police. And it's like, was he influenced by this moment? I don't understand at all. And so then that guy gets a plague on an opera seat. Hope it was worth it bringing home people from the bar. I don't even know. He was like, and they talk about the guy and they're like, they think he just snapped in an uncomfortable situation and lost control. And so he doesn't get even punished for it by the police. And it's like a lot to kill somebody. It's not just like snap. It's like crazy that you could kill gay people, and that's like what they say. It's like, they can kill us and it's our fault because we were gay. And it's like, and David is the one who told the Leah story, and he like repeats it for the Norman dude, and Kanata kind of lies with him to get the house. Like I said, sorry this review is weird. It's just weird that the series was backwards. Kanata lies again that he's working for Versace. The mom thought that she was coming with him. And Kanata's like, I can't take you with me. It is so rude. And the mom like freaks out and she's like, I can't afford this apartment. Don't leave me here alone. And she was like, he would understand. Versace would understand. He's a family man. And then Kanata knocks down his mom and then fractures her shoulder blade. And the mom lies to the doctor that it was an accident. And she's like, he's a good boy. Yeah, he's a good boy capable of murder. Sorry, the lighting changed so much it got dark because I started this in the late afternoon. My apologies. So then we find out that Versace has ear cancer, which I didn't even know was real, or is that the lie for AIDS? And then Donatella makes a very good speech to the Versace company that it's like, we need to be even more bold and be strong and daring. And Donatella goes on about how she wanted to be a doctor, but the father said, no, that's not a job for a woman. It's like dressmaker. And it was like, I could never tell my child what they should be. It's so not in me. And man, like learning to sew, I have such awe for the fashion community. Like learning to sew, it's such hard work. You gotta understand fabrics because they are different in each thing. The mom sees Versace sketching in class because he gets in trouble, and people call him a pervert, and kids call him a pansy. And the mom sees the sketching and sees that it's beautiful and says that she'll teach him how to sew if he wants. And I wanted that unconditional love. I wanted it so bad. And his mom helped him make the dress. And like, how hard is that? How hard is that to see your children's believes their dreams and believe in it? And it turns out that Andrew Kanata's parents really did give him the master bedroom, even though it's ridiculous, because the dad wanted him to feel special, and when you think you're special, success follows. They give him the master bedroom except for the closet because the dad needs it for suits, and the dad hangs the American flag, and he gets dressed in suits with him and his son. They're both interviewing. The dad did night school. He was really a stockbroker, or trying to be anyway, and Andrew is interviewing for a really good school. I mean, yeah, it's just crazy. They have a 120,000 home, and then they asked Kanata during a school interview what he wanted to do, and he gives these wholesome 5 wishes, and they asked for one, and he was like, I want to be special, which is so scary and insane thinking about what he did. Then the dad is mad because he only gets a $60,000 salary when he wanted a huger salary, and wanted to eat like kings every night. And then he fakes the mom that he didn't get the stockbroker jobs, and then gets mad at her because he was So then Mr. Kanata, Andrew Kanata's father, pulls this trick on the mom and says, you didn't think I got the job. And she's like, I only thought you didn't get the job because you told me. And he was like, I did it as a joke, but you believed it. But my son Andrew knew. And he was like, we need to check your medication again. And then he hits his wife in front of Andrew. So, yikes. And also maybe why he is the way he is. And then he tells them that his mom has been in the hospital in front of him. And he makes Andrew Kanata read The Art of Conversation. And there's 2 other siblings, but they're hardly there in the story. And Mr. Kanata tells Andrew, he's like, it's not enough to be smart, you have to fit in. And his dad teaching him is just rough. And then Andrew gets into the school, and his dad is so proud, he kisses his feet. It's like so spooky. But then his dad, you get to kind of see how crazy he even is, because he like talks to a dial tone because he doesn't make a sale, but he pretends he got it in office. And then he buys a car for Andrew, not for the other kids who are old enough to drive. And he goes and tells the mom, he's like, I'm making sure that Andrew doesn't end up like you, and then beats her outside of the house in like broad daylight. And people might argue like, it was the 90s, but like that stuff should have never been okay at all. And then Mr. Cunanan tells Andrew that, oh, you're the best friend I've ever had. Your brothers and sister, they're a good kid, but they're not special. And he was like, one day your mom couldn't even get out of bed. She's depressed. She has a weak mind. And he's like, I looked after you. I was the mother and the father. It's so messed up. And like, when the mom tries to talk to him, he like will roll the window up on the mom. And his dad is like trying to be like the world's great opportunist, and he discourages Andrew for wanting to write a book, which is what Andrew, I think, really honestly does want to do, because he says you shouldn't write a book until somebody asks you to pay $1 million for it, which is probably true, but when you've got something to say, you gotta say it, and sometimes no one's gonna pay you $1 million unless they know what you can do. And then there's like kind of this dark scene where I'm assuming his dad molested him, but it's not entirely clear, because it's like he turns off the light and is like, oh, you burned your foot on a heater and you didn't make a sound. It's just very, very creepy. And he was like, and I kissed you better. Oh, so messed up. Which would make sense for why he's gay, because I do think that sometimes that does create a need where you're like, maybe I don't just like the same sex, because something like that happened and it just like messes with your mind. Not to say that being gay is wrong, but I'm saying that it can be influenced by trauma too, like a lot of things can. Andrew, then we cut to Andrew protesting at school pictures, and somebody calls him a fag, and he's like, if being a fag means being different, sign me up. Oh my god, like I want to just like have bumper stickers of every quirky line that he says, even though it's terrible because he's a murderer. But he makes the photographer take his photograph, and he has like an unbuttoned shirt and tie, and then it ends up that Andrew's dad is like trying to get this guy's grandma's money, like he's like preying on old people's fear, and trying to like get them to give money. And then this dude yells at him, like picks up the phone and is like, you're trying to steal her money and she can't even heat her house. He's like, I will hunt you down. And the mom can tell that Andrew is dating somebody, and the guy is like older than 30, and it is creepy because Andrew is underage, and that is not okay. And the mom's like talks again about how like, oh, he doesn't smell that nice for her, and it's so weird. Like she's like obsessed with his smell. Like I wonder if that's true, and I've never heard of that with like anybody's mom ever. It was so weird. And he says that the person he's seeing is older, and the mom is like, oh yeah, a young man should always be with an older woman. It teaches him to be a man. And he says that they met babysitting, and he's like got a flask. So yeah, it is messed up. And then the guy buys him, I think, perfume in the glove department, and then Cunanan is like, but you buy me gifts, but that's not what this is about for me. And the guy's like, oh, don't get so serious. And then he asks him to go to this house party, Andrew does, and the guy's like, I'm a married man, we're secret. And Cunanan's like, I don't want to be secret on the side. And he's like, wow, you really thought it could be more, get out. And then just like he goes to the party solo, which is honestly pretty admirable because I would have went home and cried. And he dances in this red jumpsuit that is honestly maybe more iconic than Britney Spears. Sorry not to shame anybody or make a competition, but it's pretty iconic. Then this little college gay guy asked about, and then he dances so cool. When Darren Criss dances, I feel so much joy in my heart and soul. All I want is I would love Darren Criss to be in the red shoes so that he dances forever. Everybody stops dancing when he dances, but his future best friend Lizzie dances with him. And she's like, oh my god, I wish you went to Bishop's, we'd be BFFs, totally me. And she goes like, can I tell you a secret? And he was like, can we only ever speak in secret? And she says like that she's an imposter, and he's like, the best people are. And she, I think to this day, like doesn't believe that he was a murderer, like wants him to come forward and like knows he's innocent, like he's the godfather of her children. It's insane. And she says that she's actually married and a grown-up, and Kanata's like, whatever, I get along best with older people. And she says she was homeschooled, so she misses youth and fun. And I think I don't know if she says she wants to seek out heroes. Sorry, I didn't take great notes. Or if Kanata says he wants to seek out heroes. But Versace was on the list, which is scary. So then the dad gets accused of embezzling money from an old lady, and he says nothing to his family, and he starts shredding documents. And the FBI starts to come after him. I have no idea if this is really true, but I hope it is, because it makes when I learned about this in watching it like blew my mind apart. My jaw was to the floor. I was shooketh. So Andrew won most likely to be remembered. Yikes. I guess it's maybe true. Who else do we remember from that particular high school at that time? But wow, what a way. And then he did like a Latin quote that was like, after me, destruction, which the mind fuckery of this is just too much. And he just liked it because it sounded cool, but I don't know. It feels deeper to me than that. His dad also was in the Navy, which is strange, and maybe like it's weird how much his story is circular, and I'm obsessed with circular stories and like finding the things that like bond together, like the repetitions of the past, like his dad's in the Navy, Jeff's in the Navy, like finding these similar things. And it's not like it's entirely uncommon to be in the Navy. When I was in Texas, I met so many people in the Navy. But the dad ends up having like hidden cash under the floor, and then he makes a run for it, shoves the mom out of the way, and the FBI then comes at the house, and he slips out the back door as the FBI is coming, and Andrew Kanata just sees his dad booking it, and his dad says, don't believe a word they say, and then takes Andrew Kanata's car keys, and his dad speeds out of there. Like, what the heck? Then the credit cards are maxed out, the bank accounts are empty, he had sold the house a week ago, he knew that the FBI were coming, and now their whole family has nowhere to live. I was bamboozled by this. I could not imagine that happening in my life, and I feel really bad to anybody that has happened to. And then Andrew goes to find dad, and kind of like lies about it, and the mom just like unravels. She goes like, I knew he was a bad man and I kept my mouth shut. And she was like, and Andrew Kanata's like, no, dad wouldn't leave us with nothing. And the mom begs him not to go, says that the dad's dangerous. And she says that she's scared. And then Andrew puts his hand over her mouth. It's so gross. And he writes on a piece of paper that the FBI is listening and that dad has money. And so she just insists that he just insists that she's wrong, and he goes to the Philippines. And then he meets his uncle, and there's like a language barrier. And it's very interesting that like wealth is very much tied to Andrew's self-esteem, which is probably like in how the dad portrayed it. But now the dad's living in this like tiny shack. eating pork skin and drinking a cold beer. And the dad was like so excited, knew that he would come, and Andrew's like, Mom says we have no money. And the dad's like, oh, she's a weak mind. He's like literally terrible and abusive. Like, no wonder, if this is true about the dad, no wonder Andrew Cunanan is who he is. Like, abusers are made, not born. And the dad was like, yeah, I sold the house because they would have taken it. And he was like, I got millions out of reach. And it's like super hot in the Philippines. Everybody's sweating. He's like, I'm used to the heat. He was like, I grew up in it. My body remembers. And he was like, you know, you can pretend that you belong somewhere else, but the body knows. And essentially, then Andrew's dad has no money, no plans, no millions. His father is a liar and a thief. And the dad's like, they're all stealing. I didn't steal. Like, everybody in the stock market is stealing, which might be true. He was like, I just stole too small. I stole only what I needed to be a father and American. And he was like, and then Andrew Cunanan is like, I can't be like you, Dad. Like, I can't be a lie. He was like, I bragged to my friends about you. And it's just like crazy to see, because he like it does become his father in a different way, right? In a more intense way, but essentially becomes the thing he fears most, which is so scary. I often have that with having like not kosher parents. And he's like, and he doesn't have to be like it. And it's like weird. He does this like weird self-fulfilling prophecy of it. The dad like even lied that he was in a book of top 500 stockbrokers, which is not even a real book. And then he says that Andrew is weak like Mom, and that the mom never cared that he was stealing as long as there was money, and that he's not upset that he stole. He's upset that he stopped. And that all he was doing was working for his like sissy kid with a sissy mind. It's so terrible. Then they like really, the word, I have never thought of the word sissy having so much venom until this series. And then Andrew cries because this is traumatizing as heck. And then the dad is like, oh, you're just like your mom, special sissy boy. Like, it is terrible. Why is he like this? And he's like legit about to stab his father, which we can almost understand, because this is insane. And he was like, you come and judge me, I judge you, I'm ashamed of you, and I spit on you. Be a man for once. And Andrew just cries, and he just doesn't hurt his dad or kill him, which is crazy. And then he just grips the knife to where he bleeds, and then he says, I'll never be like you. Whew, so intense. Boy howdy, what an intensity. I guess the yearbook was actually, the yearbook quote, I think there's been like a mix-up. They said that it was after me destruction, but it's actually after me glory, which is still a little bit scary to me. So now they've got an empty house. People are whispering about him. He's got to apply for a job at CVS. And then like the CVS manager is like, oh, who's your father? He's Filipino. Do I know him? And he's like, no, my mom does all the shopping. And he was like, what did your dad do? And Andrew's like, he lives in Manila. And he was like, he's like, I just came back from visiting. And then he starts lying. Here we go. He starts saying that he owns multiple pineapple plantations. And I guess in real life, the father didn't believe that Andrew Cunanan was guilty or that he was gay. And he made a freaking church in his memory. There's actually no record of charges against the father that I could find. But his mother claims that he misappropriated $106,000. I don't know, because the mother seems insane as well. The dad was also in a survivalist cult. So this family was complicated, even if the story isn't true. But I like to believe the story is true because it's just so connected. So then we see Kanata, and he's like celebrating with champagne that he's killed Versace. And the mom is like under the blanket watching the story unfold about her kid, and like the cops come and she's like, did you kill him? Like, is just like so messed up. Andrew Kanata is in this houseboat. He's like robbing people. He like, on the news, they're like showing Versace being shot. He laughs. They ask Miss Miglin to kind of go into hiding, and she's like, I've never missed a broadcast. I'm not hiding because of this murder. He's not going to change my life. But it's like, Andrew Cunanan has lost it, ladies and gentlemen. He has lost it. He sees himself on TV. He says, oh my God, there's like helicopters searching for him. It is craziness. He's just like going out on the balcony and watching. I can't even imagine. I cannot. I wouldn't know what to do. I think I would turn myself in. I don't think I could take the pressure of having to hide, or like, it's just so surreal. He's on the 10 most wanted. I don't even know. I feel like I've only made that list from like a couple of boys' heads. He's like, he like goes, I think, outside to venture, because he just like, Andrew Cunanan thinks he's gonna get away with it. He's not that worried. And there's like police everywhere surrounding the Miami area, so he like can't get out. And he's like, goes to people and like pretends to be lost to see if he can find a back way, and he pretends to be somebody else so they don't know, and then ends up like throwing, I think, the truck's keys in the water and just like screams, because I think he's like starting to realize there's nowhere to go, buddy, right? There's nowhere to go. And then Andrew like sees his mom on TV surrounded by paparazzi, which is crazy. And then they go back to Schmitty's character, and he's like, they're like, where was he hiding? And Schmitty's character is like, he wasn't hiding, he was partying. And then I guess the girl from Orange is the New Black, I can't remember her character name, but she's the cop here, and they're like, they say that she's the only lesbian in the force, but there is like nothing to indicate that, but I guess it's also not her story. But he was like, you guys didn't care when he killed a bunch of nobody gays, but now that he's killed a celebrity, all of a sudden he's like, you can't find the guy who really do it, so now you're gonna blame me, who is also a gay, and say that I'm an accessory to murder. And he confesses that Cunanan didn't stop talking about Versace, and he was obsessed that he didn't have to be in the shadows of being gay, that he could just be gay, he could be sick with AIDS potentially, and nobody cares. And he was like, he wanted everyone to know the pain. He wanted to let you know about being like born hated like that, being born a lie. He was like, he's not hiding, he's trying to be seen, which honestly, probably freaking true. Way to go, Schmitty. You can take some money out of the douchebag jar. So Kanata's still hiding on a boat, and this woman goes to find him, and because she mistakes him for somebody else, but he shuts the gun, and he shuts the door. Sorry, I can't show a gun. He shuts the door, and he has a gun, and he tries to like sneak off the boat, and the woman leaves. And it's kind of insane, because it's like, what are you gonna do at this point? Are you gonna kill somebody else who's gonna top Versace, right? And Lizzie then comes on the TV and says that she loves him unconditionally. She was like, I know you care about what other people think, but you still have a chance to show this world the side of you that I know. The time has come for this to end peacefully. So much tension. And then David's dad wants to clear his son of any suspicion. He was like, he says that David probably tried to stop him, but he didn't know how. And then Cunanan is like running out of food. He ends up eating dog food, and I'm like, hey, in prison they'll feed you. So then Kanata calls the dad and says that he's in trouble and he needs help. And the dad promises to fly to him in Miami and to come hug him. And he was like, hey, in 24 hours, it's all going to be okay. And he's like, be ready to leave. I'll be there soon. And so Andrew packs his stuff. And I'm like, how are they going to fly if they're the most wanted? But I guess there's no security maybe back then because it's pre-9/11. And then, as he's packing, he sees his dad on TV. And his dad is saying he isn't homosexual, that he was manipulated by older men. And he says that he's innocent, but he's not coming to get him, which was terrible. And like using him for a publicity stunt. And then the dad like lies and says that Andrew Kanata phones him regularly and that he's a good son, perfect, the most special genius, and you'll never catch him, and that he's selling the movie rights to his life story titled Name to be Remembered By. I literally hate his dad so much. It's not okay. And I almost wonder if, like, is Andrew Kanata tripping at this point? Is he on drugs? Is he so hungry? Is he just, like, so delusional from a clear mental illness? I mean, but there's no way for him to travel. And neither was his dad, too, if his dad is on the list, too. And then we have like kind of a B-plot of Versace's boyfriend feeling like he doesn't matter. And I think this was not true. I think the boyfriend did get a portion of Versace's empire. But he basically is like, I'm just tossed away like a piece of trash. Like, I loved him and he was my life and I don't matter. He doesn't have any of the estate. Like his home that he was living in is gone because he doesn't own it because it was Versace's house. Just kind of like the bad thing if you're like not married to somebody, which they couldn't get married back then because it was the 90s and people were so homophobic. Ugh, hate it. And Donatella isn't going to help Versace's boyfriend at all because she was never a big fan of Versace being gay. Then Princess Diana and Elton John were at Versace's funeral. I just thought that was pretty interesting because you maybe wouldn't think about them being there, but that's pretty cool that they were. And the boyfriend wasn't even allowed to be in the funeral party, even though he like was his boyfriend, and like how terrible. Honestly, so sad. Like the priest doesn't even kiss them. I think they have this like big Catholic funeral. It is definitely a snub. And then Andrew Cunanan shaves his head, which to me is so dumb because he just left a bunch of DNA about where you were. I mean, I guess they can't really track you as well back then, but it's still like now if they can identify you. Then the old guy from the boathouse comes back. Andrew Cunanan shoots him. There's like a bunch of gunshots from the police. Helicopters overhead. It is literally crazy. He is surrounded by police. I can't even imagine. And I mean, like, he's obviously guilty. Obviously, we know that. But I'm like, how do the cops know? How does anybody really know? Like, he could potentially, like, if there wasn't any proof, he could have maybe gotten away. I'm sure they had, like, fingerprints or something. But, they were, like, the cops were, like, pissed because they're, like, our attempts to communicate have been unsuccessful. And then he, like, sees, like, the kid version of himself, like, kind of is, like, lost in his past. And, like, has this, like, kind of this, like, fantasy where people know him as a great man and not a serial killer. And he just, like, wrecks this old man's boathouse. Like, it is disgusting. And they said that even the way that the TV shows it, which was pretty disgusting, it was even worse in real life, which is insane to me. But I mean, obviously he was mentally messed up. Like, and I know I have depression and my house is messy, so I cannot imagine being a serial killer. And so Cunanan lays in his underwear on bed and blows his brains out. And is it worth it for him to die? Was that the right thing to do? Obviously, I'm assuming that he was guilty and did that, but the fact that it was like worse than prison, I wonder if he probably would have just been shot on sight anyway. But I guess it's probably better that the killer kills himself rather than a policeman killing somebody. Yeah, it's a very, very intense. I guess some more critiques. I don't know if I love, sometimes Darren, he does it with Blaine. I don't know if I love the like affected gay voice. I do, like, some gay people I think have kind of a lispier voice, some gay people don't. He always does this like higher pitch thing and it feels fake, and that's probably, I do almost wish that they cast somebody who was gay, but there was so much denial of Andrew with like labels, and Darren is so metrosexual that I think it works for this. He's also not playing any gay characters anymore, which is pretty admirable to do that. I don't know if it was bad. I'm also like, you're an actor and sometimes you're gonna play parts of yourself, right? Just because, but I guess because he's straight identifying, he's not having it. I gotta have some rosé because I'm stressed out thinking about Andrew Cunanan and that this was a real thing. Oh my god. Like, what the heck? He assassinated Versace because he was mad that he was out and proud. Seems, ugh, what? Then I think this, like, there's a dream segment again, and he has this whole thing. He's like, what if you had your dream your whole life that you were special, but no one believed it? And you, and it's sad because Versace, I feel like in this instant of the scene, really does believe him, and that's like, I mean, Versace probably was the most incredible person Andrew Cunanan ever met, even though he was in love with David. And Versace's like, it's not about pursuing, it's about doing it. And he's like, and Cunanan is like, well, do you think I could be a designer? And I almost hate that Versace, I wish he encouraged it and was like, yeah, be an intern, right? But maybe he like just sensed that something was off. But man, would have his whole life changed if he had let Cunanan work for him? But Versace is not looking for an assistant or a prodigy, and Cunanan is like, but this feels like destiny, why can't you feel it? And he just like didn't give him a chance because Versace was too busy. And like, but sometimes you just don't have the job for him, and probably like Versace was so established at that point, he just doesn't have anything. And he could have at least said like, hey, I can follow up with you if there's a position, and he could have said like, right now I'm full, but I'll think about it. But he basically just says, you'll understand why I said no, maybe because he is a serial killer. And he doesn't, he like leaves him at pretty much that. And it just like, it's like he was so mad that he took his like chance at stardom or like at doing something big. But even though like he just ran into Versace, which is like more than most people, and I guess maybe feels like he earned it because he did all these sexual favors for old men, but it's, you know, but earning it is bigger than that, you know? It takes so much work. And so when the police find him, they're like shocked because he's like just a boy. I guess maybe that makes him innocent in the way that he was like kind of young, and makes him feel sorry for him, which might be bad because he did so many terrible things so young. But if his dad was anything like that, his dad was really messed up. And then they tell Miss Miglin that Andrew Cunanan shot himself, and she's like, good, it's over. And it's, whoa. But I understand. And she starts to receive letters from people she never even know, and then she learns that Lee paid all of these guys' bills because they were gay, and he never told her about the people he helped, even though I'm pretty sure he was getting sexual favors. But denial is a fun place to live. And she was like, she replies to every letter, and I guess like, I mean, it's weird that maybe she didn't see it from the account. I'm assuming they have a shared account. But she feels that Mr. Lee Wiggin is alive in their letters, and that and that she's very proud of him. I think too they weren't even gonna bring her back for that last scene, but the audience loved her so much. I mean, I freaking loved her. I like raved about her. So they brought her back for the last thing. And then Donatella is mad because she doesn't want help, which is weird to me. Even for a fashion show, it feels like there's so much that goes on for a fashion show. I only know this because of Gossip Girl. But she, like, that you wouldn't accept help is interesting. Donatella's very interesting. I would love to hear, we need a Donatella, I want to hear Donatella's life story because I am very interested in who she is as a person. And then we have this thing, I don't know if this is true or not, but it feels kind of cliche. And she is like, she feels guilty because she was like, I ignored Versace's call. And I'm like, yeah, girl, it matters how you treat people. Like, don't ignore people you care about calls because you're bitter and angry. Like, you gotta grow up, right? This is literally why kindness and choosing love over everything matters most of all, because you never know what tomorrow is going to bring. Yeah, her cry here was very weird, but I mean, grief is weird. So Versace's lover attempts suicide. I don't know if that's true in real life. It is definitely very strange how intertwined when lives are. I remember I read this whole book on the theory of suicide and how that when you kill yourself, it creates a ripple effect, and that you affect people that you won't even know, because someone will read your suicide and then can almost like start to have thoughts of suicide themselves. It's super insane, but it's a very true scientific theory. This is one of the largest FBI failed manhunts, and basically it just has a lot to do with that, like, fear and prejudice are always in fashion, is kind of like the summary of this thing. And yeah, it's brutal. It was brutal. It was compelling to watch, though. It's probably one of my favorite Ryan Murphy produced-esque things that's come. I haven't seen the O.J. Simpson one, but I can do that. If you liked this review, please follow my stuff, consider donating to my Patreon or buying some merch, or sending me money because you love me and you appreciate my work. I hope you enjoyed this. I do a podcast for children's media called Mouthy, where I do interviews, and then I obviously will post here fun, silly stuff that I do, a bunch of acting clips, because that's what I do normally. And I will also be doing kind of adult or horror movie films that I found interesting and concepts I wanted to talk about, because I love film analysis. So thank you so much, and please subscribe.